Come in, come in. Pull the blanket up just beneath your chin. The night is cool and your room is dim, just as it should be. Let me take you somewhere slower now, somewhere old, somewhere quiet, stone cold and candle warm, a place where time echoes gently and light moves like breath. A very small boy, no more than 12, who lived inside one of the great Gothic cathedrals of old Europe. Tonight, Grandpa's story is about a boy, not as a priest, not as a scholar. No, this boy lit the candles, all of them, dozens, sometimes hundreds, every day before the first breath of dawn. So tonight we'll follow him, not through fame or fortune, but through duty, dust, and flame, because sometimes the smallest lights shine the longest. Imagine it's the year 1343. You're barefoot, your tunic's too long. Your hands are always dirty with wax and ash. And your job, it starts while the moon's still up. You're a candle boy. Not many know what that means anymore, but long ago, every great cathedral had at least one, a small servant, an apprentice, or even an orphan taken in from the streets. And when the bells rang at Lord's, just before sunrise, the candles needed to be ready. The stone giant always, even in summer, the stone holds winter in its bones. The cathedral is cold, colder than outside. It smells of incense, damp wool, beeswax, and something older, something like time itself. It rises above your head like a stone mountain, with arches like tree limbs, and stained glass that blushers only when the sun arrives. Your feet slap softly on the flagstones as you make your way down the nave. One hand holds your tinder, the dark shifts. The other, your long brass pole with the wick at the end, the lighter's tool. But still, you light them, one by one. The candles are set high, so high you can see the flame when it is lit. Some tall as your shoulder, some thick as loaves of bread, some in elaborate iron candelabras shaped like vines. And when you light them, and how to stand absolutely still when lighting near the bishop's chair. Just a little. The rules of light, there are rules. Of course, always rules. Only the sanctuary candles burn overnight. Those near the altar, left to glow for the sleeping Christ. The rest must be snuffed and relit each day. You're taught how to trim the wicks so they don't smoke, how to melt the wax strips evenly. You're told never ever to let a candle die during Mass. And once you saw what happened when a boy did. No, he wasn't beaten. He was sent out. The monks sit quietly. You sit lower than them on the steps. Out of the cathedral, out of the warmth, out of the rhythm. No one spoke of him after. Breakfast in the cloisters. If your candles are lit in time, you're given bread and warm broth, served in a wooden bowl in the cloisters. You chew slowly, always slowly. The broth warms your belly, the bread softens in your mouth, and then, with the faintest rays of light spilling through the stained glass rose, Mass begins. And your work has only just begun, because for every candle lit, there is wax to clean, wick to trim, soot to wipe. You are the caretaker of fire, and no one even knows your name. They say the cathedral never truly sleeps, even when the monks do, even when the bells are silent. The stone listens, and in one small alcove near the northern transept, where no one much goes, there is a candle niche, older than any living monk, and a whisper passed between candle boys over the years, that once one of them saw a saint wake up, a boy named Thomas. His name was Thomas, not much taller than a broom, red curls, no shoes, even in winter, He was a candle boy, just like the others, except for one thing. He never snuffed the candles, where others followed the rules. Thomas ... hesitated. He would stand by the last candle of the night, the vigil flame near the shrine of Saint Eromond, and watch the flame flicker against the saint's carved face, Saint Eromond, a stone statue, rough and weathered eyes, closed in eternal prayer. And Thomas would whisper to him, "Small things. How was your day? Are you lonely? Do you think I'll grow up to be a monk?" No one noticed until one morning Thomas came to breakfast with wax hardened into his hair and the wide-eyed look of someone who had tea blinked in hours. He told the kitchen friar. St. Eromond moved. They thought he'd fallen asleep standing up. But Thomas insisted. He looked at me, just once. His eyes weren't stone anymore. They were the color of melted wax. The candle that wouldn't die that week. Something strange happened, no matter who snuffed it. Thomas, another boy, even Brother Garrick, the sacristan. The vigil candle by St. Eromond's shrine would relight itself, sometimes minutes later, sometimes at night, with no one in the room. It startled the monks. They changed the wick, the wax, the brass base. Still it lit. Even in the dark, it glowed softly, like breath on a mirror. So they let it be. Thomas, they said, was no longer just a candle boy. He was something else. The quiet pilgrims, word spread, as it always does. And soon, pilgrims came not for relics, but to see the boy who spoke with saints. Thomas would kneel, shyly, beside the vigil flame. He wouldn't speak, just light the candle with great care, and people would weep. Not loudly, just tears sliding down cheeks without reason, because sometimes it's not the miracle that moves us, it's the silence around it. How the story ends. One winter, during a snowstorm, Thomas disappeared. No footprints in the cloister snow, no blankets disturbed, only a candle burning by the shrine, still lit, still warm. And by morning, the wax had pooled into the shape of 2 small footprints. They tried to clean it. It reappeared, and it remains to this day, though the cathedral now stands half ruined, the wind echoing through broken glass. If you go there, and I don't recommend it at night, you may find that same alcove. The vigil flame still flickers. The wax is still soft. And if you kneel quietly, you might feel a hand on your shoulder. Very small, very warm, just once. That was Thomas, dear one, the boy who asked questions when others followed rules. And in the house of God, maybe he answered, just once. In return, cathedrals, my dear, are not just built upwards, with flying buttresses and soaring arches. They are also built downward, layer by layer, century by century. Beneath the bells and stained glass, there are hollows, cavities, forgotten rooms, and sealed tunnels. And sometimes, just sometimes, a boy lighting candles in the choir stalls, steps where he shouldn't. The loose stone. This story comes from a choir boy named Emile. Though some say he started as a candle boy. It was a quiet day after Vespers. The air was still heavy with incense. Emile had been left to clean up the scattered wax drips around the choir, where the monks had stood and sung. As he reached beneath one stall to wipe away a hardened clump, his fingers brushed something strange. Not wax, not stone. There was a breeze, faint and cold, slipping through a gap in the floor. He pressed on it, and the floor gave just slightly. A stone slab, unsealed, a room that wasn't on the plans. He came back that night with a rushlight hidden in his cloak. No one saw him disappear between the pews. He pried up the slab and found a narrow staircase. Steep and curling, with the kind of blackness that feels thick, the steps were carved crudely, as if in a hurry. The walls close. It smelled not of rot, but of old iron and candle smoke. The tunnel curved down for far longer than the cathedral's foundation should have allowed. And then it opened. The chamber of voices, the room Emil found, was small, no bigger than a monk's cell, but its walls were covered in wax, dripped, layered, melted, and hardened again. And embedded in the wax, notes, hundreds of them, scraps of parchment, torn hymn pages, a strip from a bishop's robe, all covered in writing. Not prayers, no, but confessions. I saw him bury the relic without speaking the rite. I lied about the vision. There was no saint. Forgive me. I loved her. I still do. It was as though every secret the cathedral tried to forget had been poured into wax and pressed into the stone. And in the center of the room, a single burned-out candle, still standing. The second burial, Emil told no one. But the next day, he was summoned by the prior. As if someone had seen, he was given a new assignment. Leave the choir and tend the gardens outside the cloister. He was never allowed back in the cathedral proper. Reinforced. Years later, when workmen were repairing the choir stalls after a lightning strike, they tried to find that loose slab, but it was gone. The floor had been repaved, the tunnel sealed. Whatever was down there, whatever wax-buried secrets, they were covered again. This time, not by accident, but on purpose. Why it matters? You see, child, a cathedral is more than a place of worship. It's a vault of voices, or folded into wax, or buried beneath the feet of choir boys and candlelight, of longings, of regrets. Not all sins are loud. Some are whispered into stone, and though the faithful above may sing, the past below still listens. Cathedrals are meant to be houses of God, but even the holiest house needs keys, and not everyone who holds those keys wears a saint's face. You see, for every candle boy trimming wicks in the cold, there was a man in a gilded robe behind the altar, making sure no one looked too closely at the back room. And those rooms, hidden behind velvet curtains, stone partitions, and her-backed confessionals, held things the choir never sang about. The treasury that wasn't always gold behind the altar was the sacristy, a place where vestments were stored, communion prepared, relics guarded. But in the great cathedrals of old Europe, the sacristy often bled into ... something else. They called it the treasury. Behind locked doors and under iron bolts were chests, big, iron-bound, dust-covered chests, and inside some held chalices of hammered silver, others old coins given by kings, but others held stranger things. Lots of scrolls, never shown to the public, some written in ink, so faded it glowed faintly under candlelight. Bones, wrapped in silk, labeled in Latin. One was just marked FEMA. Uncertain, a box of rings, heavy and ornate, taken from buried bishops, and scrolls, but who always carried a black cloak, even in summer. One scroll told of a choir master who claimed to have dreamt the same hymn for 40 nights, and who disappeared on the 41st. The cloak and the whisper there was a man once, Father Arnoldas, who never raised his voice, who never walked quickly. He would take it behind the altar at night and light 3 candles, even when no mass was said. Some said he was protecting a relic. Others said he was speaking to someone. He never wrote sermons, but he always knew who sinned. One candle boy, not our Tomas, another, claimed to have seen Arnadi speaking with a tall man dressed in shadow, standing inside the candlelight as if it were daylight. No one believed him, of course, But the next week Arnoldus was transferred, and no one ever again wore that black cloak. When the bells fell silent once every few decades, a strange thing would happen. A great silence. The bells, for reasons never explained, would stop ringing. Not because they broke, but because no one rang them. The monks would whisper more. The candle boys lit fewer flames. And the clergy, they would retreat to the sacristy for hours, sometimes days. No records, no visitors, and when they returned, they looked older. Not sick, not injured, just like they had learned something they didn't want to know. That's when the stories would resurface. About hidden tombs below the altar, about scrolls that couldn't be read without fasting, about relics that bled wax when touched. And so the boys, and even the monks, stopped asking. The warmth. They just lit their candles and tried not to look at the back wall. Why it all stayed hidden, not out of shame, no, but because the church was too important to break. The people needed it. The light, the mass, the music, and so the men behind the altar, for all their flaws, bore the burden of mystery, of weight, of secrecy. They hid the cracks so the roof would not fall, even if they trembled doing so. So now, child, close your eyes. Picture the cathedral again, but this time empty. Just one boy stepping quietly through the dark, holding a pole, wick lit at the end, and with every candle he touches, a shape reappears. A corner glows, a memory returns. He lights until he can't anymore, and then, gently, he snuffs them all, one by one, leaving only the sanctuary candle, the last flame, the one that never sleeps, like the past, like the stories, like Grandpa,